This is Media Sales Mastery, the podcast for media sales professionals. In each episode, we bring you information, insights, ideas, and interviews from some of the industry's top thought leaders. Head to mediasalesmastery.com to help pick the topic and guide the show.
This is Media Sales Mastery, the podcast for media sales professionals. I'm your host, Jamie Wood, and our guest today is Jo Gierke, Regional Director for USA and Canada for Boost Media International. The topic we're covering is packaging your inventory. Now, I've mentioned in previous episodes, as media salespeople, the products and assets that we sell across are becoming increasingly diverse and complex. One of Jo's key areas of expertise is actually helping media companies around the world drive purchase of the inventory they wish to sell. Jo, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
This topic of packaging your inventory, it's sort of an internal term we use a lot, but it's an important topic to dive into, particularly for people in those early years in media. And I think we've got a lot of people who are listening who've actually reached out to me and said that one of the biggest challenges in their roles at the moment is, as media salespeople, like going to market and taking like new platforms, new assets, having the core business with high sell and low sell inventory, taking all of these different products to market in a way that feels kind of simple and easy to digest for the client.
Yeah.
And, the question I suppose we'd kick off with to frame this is, in your view and your experience, why is it so important for media salespeople to master the skill of packaging their inventory well?
I think it's important because you want to do the right thing by the client. Like at the end of the day, we should all be about the client. It doesn't really matter what inventory we have and all of the rest of it, but it is about the client. But I think the key thing that you have to step back to is know your product. So if you're selling all four different things, is actually know how they work. So therefore, then you can have an easier conversation with your customer, because while packaging inventory together is important, you've got to have the basics to know how they work together. It's not just about, I need some TV spots, I need some radio spots, I need some ads in the paper and digital. And I have clients where we have sales reps that sell across all of those. There are some people that have a strength in one media, and that's fine, we understand that. But they know about how it works together. I mean, when I started in media, I worked for a newspaper, the Rockhampton Morning Bulletin.
Shout out to North Queensland there.
Shout out. But, we used to be able to do a media plan and do it before lunch and then go for lunch and have a long lunch and then, maybe not come back. I think those days are gone because it's so much more difficult. There are so many more opportunities for clients. There's so many people, you kind of like shouting at them, saying, we're the best, we can do this. You can't just do one thing anymore because it's, I'm on my phone, I'm on my computer, I don't watch normal TV, but I watch, pay TV, I watch, I listen to the radio, but sometimes I listen to podcasts. It's like, how do you get to that person with just one media? You can't. It's just not possible anymore.
Yeah, and you're really seeing that, aren't you? Media companies, we've mentioned in previous episodes, they're investing in ubiquity. It's like, okay, there's a content production capability here in many cases, but we're now not a linear broadcast medium anymore. We have digital, we have, events, we have potentially one or two broadcast mediums within our asset base. And I think that's kind of the central theme for today is for people, even if you sell a single medium, the likelihood of having one asset or one piece of inventory to sell is very low.
Yeah.
You're going to be expected to be selling high sell, low sell, different kind of fringe assets and products as well in most cases, aren't you?
Yeah, and I would say I think it's an exciting time for people that are selling because you have so much more that is available. So there's always, I think, a solution for a client or an opportunity for a client. So you have more, I suppose, assets in your bag to say, okay, here is a solution that will meet your need. And it's exciting for, I suppose, clients because they can hear about these new opportunities and hopefully they're hearing it from you rather than your competitor or from, someone else in the industry.
That's a great point.
Yeah, I think that's what we forget. You forget it's a great opportunity for us as salespeople to learn about different media because it's not going to go away. And I think that's one of the good things about media is it's you can move from one to another. It's, one of those kind of industries where you can stay in media. It's very diverse. You can learn it. It works together. You can, transfer those skills. But then you can also transfer to other kind of, I suppose, genres or other avenues as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, look, let's jump into a little bit about yourself and Boost Media before we get into the main topic.
The first 5.
Talk to me about Boost Media. What do you guys do? What's your key remit as the regional director for the US and Canada?
Sounds very exciting.
It does. It's a very nice job title.
Yeah, it's a very American job title.
Yeah, senior VP.
I should be the VP or the president of the company. Boost Media is an organisation. We do revenue generation events. So we kind of work with media companies throughout the world. So we've got. We're based here in Australia, but we're also based in the US. We're based in India, Malaysia, Singapore, Dubai, and we've been working with ARN there for about 11 years. So it is about organising like an expo where the reps come in and we invite clients to come and see like an expose of the business, what they sell, what is available through that media organisation. They usually sign up for a 12-month package. That's discounted, obviously, for that period if you sign up for the 12 months. So that's kind of what we do. The process is the same wherever we do it. We might change the language. We might change it for what media. We work across TV, radio, print, digital, outdoor. Some of our clients we do all of those media for. Some clients we might just do newspaper and digital. Obviously, digital is playing a bigger part in what we do. And, some media companies now are looking at what is the perfect customer to have, how much money should they be spending with us, what does that look like. We can't just all have large customers, and we can't all then have hundreds of small customers. It's where is the best way for us to play and how much should they be spending. And this goes back to your question about packaging. How much should a customer be spending to get a return on their investment that would warrant them to invest that year after year?
Yeah.
Because, sometimes just buying a small cheap package doesn't work. And if they're not doing anything else, it's not going to complement, any other media campaign. So it doesn't work, so they don't renew it, and then you lose that customer. And I think that's part of being a good salesperson, is working out, okay, I think this is my recommendation. You need to spend this much money, because if you don't, you're not going to see the return that you need to kind of warrant this spend.
Yeah, so it's not just sort of selling remnant inventory or looking at kind of those low sell pieces of inventory and sort of packaging that up as an annual thing. There's a lot more sophistication these days, isn't there, in terms of segmenting customers, looking at that SME market, looking at those larger advertisers, finding a product mix that actually works for them, but being sure that at the back end, the fulfillment's there, the cost of doing business is considered, all these other metrics. And I think you're right. We were mentioning before this, we hit record, that, it's becoming more complex. I've been doing what I've been doing for 10 years. And I have to say, my head spins on a regular basis these days, just trying to get my head across all the different assets we've got and how we go to market with them, and providing tools and support and enablement to my guys to go out and do that. So it's a really interesting business there. And it's great you're here, because obviously this is a topic that's very closely aligned to what you do. Tell me, you've probably covered off a bit of it, but, for people that are listening that are, maybe relatively new or still early on in the journey in media sales, what's your favourite thing about the industry? I
think it gives you the time to learn about it, and to get involved, and you can make of it what you want. It's really up to you. I think media here in Australia, or even across the world, is very supportive of its people, gives you lots of opportunity to learn about it. But really, at the end of the day, it's up to you what you take out of it. Sales is hard. You just got to remember it's not personal.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point. And I think, there's no question that it is a tough gig, and it requires somebody who can be somewhat all in and really invest themselves in.
Yeah.
So I suppose that's the lead into the final question in the first 5. In your view, somebody who has a global context and works with media companies all around the world, you see a lot of different media salespeople. What would you say are the skills that someone needs to master in order to be a media sales professional?
It's so funny, because I have worked with teams in India, Singapore, the US, Colombia, Australia, everyone thinks they're different. Everyone goes, oh, is this the best team you've ever worked for? What do we do different? What do we do the best? All of that stuff. But, you know, some of those people in the top 20% just do it well because, and, you know, they're not doing anything more special than anyone else. They're just following up and giving probably the right solution in a way that their customer understands. And I think that's the other thing is service.
Yep.
Follow up. Always follow up. Don't just get the money, put the campaign on, then go, oh, sorry, it didn't work, or don't follow up and see them for another 6 months or 12 months. It's, okay, what worked, what didn't work? I want to be your marketing expert. How can I help you? And going, I suppose, that extra mile.
Yeah, well, the relationship really starts when the contract is signed, and I think that's a big pitfall.
Yeah.
And to that point earlier, you know, that thing of not saying no. It's like people have this thing about, I don't want to be a pushy salesperson. It's like, well, no, it's not a case of being pushy. It's about not burning an opportunity because it's a no. It's just a not yet.
Yeah.
You know, there's still merit in keeping in contact with people. Not everybody's ready to move immediately. No. That's understandable, but good follow-up and just being able to kind of take the clients on a journey is so critical.
And I don't think that's pushy. And I think everyone can find a way that they can do it without being pushy.
Correct.
I mean, we have 30 salespeople at the event. I will give everyone the same tools, the same training. They all go through the same thing. And every one of them will do it differently. You know, and I say to them, you've got to ask everyone for the business at this event. Like, that's our core value, is ask everyone for the business, pitch something. And I say to them, it's not about being a cheesy car salespeople who get a bad rap, to be honest with you. But you have to find what you feel comfortable with. What would you normally, you know, say? Like, you know, it might be, how can we be partners in this program? You know, what can we do to make this move forward? What have you seen today that you liked, that you didn't like? Like, you know, just work out what works for you and that you feel comfortable with. But you're going to have to push yourself to do it. And, you know, it's not for everyone, and we get that. It's, you know, face-to-face, hard sales. Some people will thrive. Some people that you think will be great at it are not great at it. Some people that you think, oh, this is not going to work for them, excel because they like the process. They like just going, that's what I can do. I can do this if I follow this process.
Well, it's a good way of simplifying it, but I think there's some really good points there across the board in terms of, you know, really good foundational skills for all media salespeople to think about. You know, good follow-up, being tenacious, asking for the business. You know, I often sort of think about it and you know, we ask every guest on this podcast, like, what makes somebody a media sales master? The theme that's coming through is they're doing the basics better than everybody else. They're not doing anything extraordinary. They're doing the ordinary things really well.
Yeah. It's the 1%ers, I think. And that's what I would say from seeing a lot of salespeople is they do the 1%ers really well. It's not about they're given the best discount. It's not about, you know, oh my God, you were given this great sales list. They work at it and they do the 1% really well every time they do something, and the follow through. And, you know, I think I say to people, you know, you've got a team of people that are not doing sales 101. That's, if you do that, you'd have a high performing team.
Yeah, that's great. Let's jump into the main topic.
Oh, right.
Media sales mastery.
So you covered a bit earlier on when we spoke, but I'm, you know, keen to hear again, Jo, when we're talking about packaging inventory, which is our topic today, what's your philosophy when it comes to packaging media inventory? So, like, you're going in to do a consult internationally. What are you looking for in order to make something attractive and compelling to a potential advertiser in that market?
Packaging inventory is not about anymore just saying, oh, we've got some space and we're going to sell that space. It's about looking at what is right for the customer, and so that they return year after year. But it's about saying, what have we got available? How can we package this up in a way that is a good package for the customer to buy at a good price? Because we're saying we want you to pick this up this week only. So we have to package it.
It has to be compelling.
Yeah, it does. Level, but it doesn't mean we have to sell everything off at a cheap rate, because there are some things we just cannot sell at a cheaper rate. And so you have to say, okay, owned and operated, we've got some room to move there. What have we got a lot available? But, it might be that our TV spots in the news, we don't discount at all. But you can have some, but you're going to have to pay the right rate. But we've got some daytime that we're willing to give you, a really great discount on. And here's, some other outside prime TV. So here's what we think is a good schedule to mix it up. This might be for, retail customers. We might do one for a non-profit. We do one for real estate. So
okay, so potentially more category-led stuff.
Yeah,
yep.
Which we did originally and then we kind of went away from and then we've come back to, I think, depending on the client too. So I'm currently working with a client in Dayton, Ohio. I get to go to all the best places. Yeah. They do TV, radio, print and digital. So we package it up in a way that you can buy a 4 package, and if you buy across all 4 platforms, you get a bit bigger discount.
Okay.
If you just want to buy their TV station, which is the best station in the market, then you're going to pay a little bit more because you're only buying that. So, it's that kind of packaging that we work on to say, okay, if they buy more, we're going to give them a bigger discount.
Sure.
But it's, I suppose, like any kind of retail environment. If you buy, I'll give you 1, you get this discount, you get 3, you get this.
So it's really looking at it like from a value proposition perspective, and I suppose it leads to the next question, which is, all media obviously have those premium properties that are, they're high demand, they have a high price point that they can actually be sold at in market. And a lot of media salespeople listening to this are going to go, well, I know the stuff that sells well. I know the stuff that's an easy sell. Maybe there's a bit of friction in terms of getting the client to want to pay the price point that they need to unlock that. And so how can a media salesperson sort of, and what are some tactics that you guys might recommend for like leveraging that low sell or that remnant inventory to kind of offset the premium pricing? Is there any sort of set way to do that, or is it a little bit of a case by case?
I think you have to look at the client's budget too and what they want to achieve, and, obviously reach into the market and how you can do that. No client's going to come to you and go, I've got this much money to spend and I'm happy to spend more. I've not met that client. I would love to have that client that wants to spend more money. But, if they want to have the premium stuff, you've got to value that to say, if you want it, you're going to have to pay for it. But if you've only got this much budget, we can give you some premium and some of this other stuff. It's about selling on the benefits of what you've got. It's not about remnant and premium. It's about what is going to work for the client and how you can package that up in a way that you can show them the benefit and then deliver on the ROI. So, I think you have to look at it in a broader picture of, okay, well, you've got $20,000 to spend. How can we give you some premium? And then we're going to give you some, not so premium to give you that reach into the market. And this is where we think it's going to work for you and what the return on the investment's going to be.
And I like what you're saying.
What is the benefit? Not just, you're going to hit 3,000 people in your market, in your demographic. It's like, so what? What's the so what for that person, for that business? Because they work really hard for that money and then they're going to give it to you. Now, they might give it to you because they're a nice guy, but they're going to give it to you because it worked. And they're not going to give it back to you if it didn't work. And I think that's at the end of the...
Yeah. And what I like here, because I think, when we have these conversations, we're talking a lot around internal language, aren't we? With bonus inventory, low sell inventory, premium pricing, off-peak, all this kind of stuff.
Clients don't know,
Correct.
Don't care. They just want to see what it's going to be at the end.
But I think, what you're saying there is a really important takeaway to go. First and foremost, it's always got to be client-centric, right? So what you do in terms of leveraging the inventory that you have available to you, the filter it has to be put through is it going to be the best solution for the client based on the available budget they have, their objectives, et cetera, et cetera.
And go back to the brief. Most people will give you a brief. Or they'll say, this is what we want to do. We want to sell X, Y, Z. Okay, how do I answer that? And it might be, look, I think the best way for you is to do, a campaign across daytime or, do some full page ads and some digital here, do an outside broadcast or whatever you want to do. But it has to have some merit. And it's not just, clients don't go, oh, you're putting me in the wrong spot or you're not giving me the premium inventory. Most of them don't know, but it's about the result. And I think you need to start selling on the result rather than, oh, we're giving you off-site or on-site or whatever.
So from my experience, as a sales director, I've got a pretty good eye on what sells and what doesn't. Yeah. And for the longest time ever, I've always kind of looked at, I suppose, the lower demand inventory for the sake of the internal term. And I've always kind of thought to myself, what I'd love is if just somebody came to me and said, Jamie, the reason this isn't selling is this, or this. It's often very difficult to diagnose the reason something is low sell sometimes. And so I guess my question for you, Jo, would be, if certain types of inventory aren't selling, how could a media salesperson diagnose the reasons why so they can clearly articulate that back up to the business? Be it the pricing's wrong, the client education piece isn't really there, we need some support to sell the proposition, maybe the market positioning isn't right, maybe just the difficulty of transaction is the issue.
Yeah.
Are there any ways that a media salesperson at the coalface, if a product's not getting traction in market or it's not converting, they could actually isolate the reasons why?
It's funny, when we put packages together for a sales team, when we first deliver those packages, you can tell whether they're going to sell them or not, because you can see how they feel about them. If the discounts, if we say that they're highly discounted and the reps get them and go, well, we sell this cheaper now without this program, then we've got a problem. If we say, this is what the package looks like, they go, oh, we wouldn't sell that to, a retail client because this wouldn't work X, Y, Z. Most of them, if you've been out on a few sales calls, will have some idea about that. So that's the best gauge, is like, okay, if you guys can't sell this or you're not willing to sell it, why? What are the reasons? And most of them would come back with, it might be, you get the excuse all the time, it's the price. Well,
yep.
Okay, so it's the price, but what else is the problem? Why do you not see the value in what, whether you're selling a show or, low inventory or whatever?
Well, that's a good point, because I completely agree that your salespeople are at the coalface. They know the customers. They know what the market wants.
Yep.
But then there's also a level of going, well, pulling the price lever isn't an option here.
No.
So how do we get comfortable with taking a proposition to market, but we obviously overcome if there's an element of reluctance on the seller's part to sell it because of something? How do we make sure that we're not just kind of discounting, we're actually addressing various other factors that would make something more desirable in market?
I think too, it's looking at the value proposition and getting them to think about it. It's not always about us giving it to them. It's like, okay, guys, we can't discount it. What is the value proposition? How can we package this? Can we package it with something else? Do you see that working? Get them involved, because the more you can get them involved, the more buy-in they'll have and the more that they'll probably then go and sell it. But if you just give it to them and say, this is what we're going to do and we're not going to discount it, probably not going to move the needle very much.
Yeah. Well, I guess, you made an interesting point earlier around looking at category-led opportunities. So going, here's something that a non-for-profit company might buy. Here's something that potentially, a professional services firm might find interesting. Yeah. And I suppose when I think about, value is really decided by the customer. Ultimately, the market you're selling into will dictate what they think a reasonable and fair value or price is. And so do certain types of inventory or do certain inventory packages carry more value depending on the client? And I'll sort of give more context here. So, what are some tips for media salespeople looking to maximize the value of their revenue? Some examples I can think of are Monday inventory is notoriously lower demand than Friday inventory, kind of broadly speaking, because retail want to be there before the weekend. Yeah. But a conveyancer wants to be in market on a Monday because that's when all the homes have sold. If you're a dating app, I'd definitely be putting the bulk of my activity on a Saturday morning when people have had a lonely Friday night at home. So, things like that. Are there any sort of, I guess, tactics that could work there around?
I think the best thing that you have are testimonials from clients that use you. Yep. If they use, if you've got someone that uses Mondays, why? What does it work? How does it work? I think we take our current customers, the value of their story and their message and why they talk to you every week or every month, for granted a bit. We forget that they're the best kind of, selling tool that we have.
Probably also interesting when I think about different categories and what's relevant and of interest to them. I also think about these missed opportunities of inventory. We work in media where we have finite inventory, but oftentimes if we don't commercialize that inventory, the opportunity to make money from that is lost as the year progresses. And if you think about other businesses that have perishable inventory, the airline industry, I'm sure you spend a bit of time on planes. They do a bloody good job of pricing their seats and their airfares based on all the different inclusions based on how far out people book, based on different, different macroeconomic factors. But they make sure that that plane takes off with full seats, and they've made money from every available seat there. And, a more crude example would be a bakery or something like that. I mean, they bake their items every day. If they're not selling them because they're commanding a premium, it's like, well, are you actually missing a revenue opportunity there? Yeah. So I find that element really interesting when we talk about packaging too.
That's the best thing about your job as being a sales rep is you be creative. Get creative with it. You know what, you only have so many radio spots. You only have so many TV spots. You want to be on air. This is what we've got. This is what is available. And, what's the benefit? What's the ROI? Newspapers are a bit different because they can add pages, but they're not going to add pages if you just discount the hell out of it. And, even with our program, not everything is discounted to a crazy level. There are some things, but, if you want to pay for the premium stuff, have some value and back yourself on your product. And I think that's one of the things that we say to our groups is, you get told every day, no, that didn't work, this didn't work, oh, this went wrong, oh, the TV rep offered me this, or the radio offered, I got a better discount, I got this price. There's a lot of, you get punched up a little bit. You got to remember that you have a great medium, that people come back to you every week or every month, every year, because it worked. As much as you might be a nice guy doing the 1% stuff, it's got to work. Otherwise, they're not going to come back and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars with you. So remember that. I think sometimes in the day-to-day of all the drama and all the things that go wrong and, the small wins that you have, you forget what you've got and how good it is. And I say to the reps, remember every client that's ever spent money with you and had a great result. Tell other people about it. And I think too, if you have some good clients, they're the best testimonial for you, like talking to other businesses. Have a referral network, so to speak, in, not just on LinkedIn or social media, but just within your own customer base.
Yeah, that one to me is the great missed opportunity, case studies, testimonials, referrals. Yeah. It's we know they work, we know how effective they are, we know the power of them. It's often something that it's always an afterthought, and I really think it's something just as a takeaway. At a pre-sales level, if you are having an early conversation with a client, really kind of leverage that as part of your value proposition. Just go, look, okay, we're gonna, you're wanting us to do some things here, that are going to drive value for you. We would love if you could reciprocate and help us out with this or that. Yeah. We want to test this. We want to test and learn. But if it works for you, can we have a commitment that we're going to do it long term? Yeah. I think, the question that comes up, and this is probably more for people who sell into the agency market, there's two schools of thought here. Don't sell me, I've given you a brief for something and you're giving me all this stuff that I don't want, and I don't know any itemized costing, so it's really hard to unbundle. I don't want a package. But then you also have the media company sitting here going, you need to go out and monetize all of these assets we're giving you, salesperson. Go out and find a way to sell it. And the way that I think, most people, particularly selling into the agency market, have success is they have a really good guiding principle or a really good central idea that kind of links the whole package together. And when people are, I suppose, going to market, to your point earlier, Jo, you don't want to go out and not be customer centric. So are there any tips for people around how do you come up with a strong central idea or a guiding principle, be it for a category or a specific client's objectives, that make it really easy to then pull in that inventory to deliver a solution?
I think it goes back to, again, knowing your product and then also knowing your client and looking at the brief. You can answer a brief pretty quickly and give them exactly what they want, but that's not you doing your job to the best. It's kind of like, here, here's what I can do, here's what it looks like. But get creative about it, look at what you've got, look at who they're trying to target, and then package it up in the way that is answering the brief but giving them more, and not just, don't just throw stuff in. That's what agencies don't like. You're just throwing stuff in because you want to sell me more, you want to make your budget for the month. I mean, everyone can see through that, but actually demonstrate the value of, this is why I'm throwing this in, or this is why I think you should do X, Y, Z. Back yourself, explain it, don't just go, oh, here you go, or email it. Don't just email it across. Go and talk them through it. Yeah. that's the best thing. And, they'll give you feedback. They might say, actually, we don't like that. We do like this. That's a great idea. And then you can work on it together. But you take away that communication piece, which we're all in, if you just send them a proposal back, or, I've ticked the pages, I've ticked the dots, there you go, you're away. It's hard to get in and get that value and get the information that you need. And I think too, we assume we know what the answers are. Sometimes we should ask more questions.
And we were speaking about him, and I've shouted out to him a few times because I really enjoyed the chat with Steve Smith from Entertainment Strategy Group and formerly Arabian Radio Network in Dubai. And Steve's obviously was the chief operating officer, so he was across the whole operation of the business in Dubai. But whenever I speak to him about anything to do with fast-tracking your product knowledge, learning all these assets, etc., he's always been a really strong believer in consume the content. Go out as an end user and consume the content. He goes, you will go to market and be able to articulate it very clearly to an advertiser. If you're selling an integrated solution that has a bunch of different touch points, being able to show how that can strengthen or reinforce or support the message, an advertiser can very quickly understand that. Yeah. Doesn't matter how we necessarily do all these different things in the back end. And so often we fall into the trap, particularly in digital, we get very romantic about, look how clever we were getting this campaign to air or getting this campaign up because of all this tech in the background. It's like, well, let's actually think about the end user. Yeah. That's ultimately, we're influencing human behavior here, aren't we?
Yeah. And I think Steve's right. And it goes back to what I said too about knowing your product is you've got to know your product before you can sell it to other people. Listen to your radio station, watch your TV station, understand how, the digital works in with that, how people can download stuff. If you're going to do a podcast, say like this, how do people interact with it? How do you get subscribers? What are the metrics for it? And it makes it easier to sell it, I think, because you can say, hey, a client did XYZ, this is what they did, this is the execution, this is the result. I know it worked because I did XYZ, or I pick up, the paper, or I read it online now, et cetera, et cetera. Because clients want to know that they don't, agencies especially, they can't be on everything at all times. There's just so much they have to be across. So much more to be across, yeah. Yeah, the good old days of, I got to buy some TV and maybe throw in some radio and a bit of press. Yep. Those days are gone, And the other thing is, as we said, media companies are doing the same amount, if not more, with less people. So you have to be across a lot more. We used to have a digital team, that looked after all the digital. Now it's laying with everyone.
Now it's baked in.
Right. So you've got to know your traditional media plus your digital plus all the other things that are coming into it. And, there's so much more now.
What heartens me about hearing this too is having that global kind of perspective that you do. It's obviously not something that's just isolated to the Australian market. It's very global. And we're very lucky that early on we've got listeners, in the UK, in the US, from Singapore, from the UAE, on this podcast, we see the downloads. And what's really, I suppose, apparent to me too is that everybody's struggling with the same challenges of what this new media world actually is. And so what I'd love to just wrap this topic up, and I don't want you to go into any commercial specifics because I know we can't, but can you share an example of a media sales team anywhere in the world, or a media salesperson anywhere in the world where you've done some consulting, where they've gained a really good competitive edge for some really sharp product packaging and from, pulling their inventory together in a way that's really compelling to the market?
We have a girl in Minneapolis who sold a lot of money. She got all of her customers that said no to her in the 12-month period before the program. She got them all back and said, this is XYZ that I pitched to you. You said it was too expensive, or you said no. I can do exactly the same thing for you at this rate, at the cheaper rate. I don't understand, you need to try it now. Now is the time to try it, when you're going to get exactly the same thing for a cheaper rate. It's this week only. You got to sign up for 12 months. She sold 20-something packages. Wow. Yeah. Just showing, not that discounting is everything, but it was I showed you the value last time. You still said no. I'm showing you the value this time, and it's going to cost you less. Yep. But to get the same return on investment, why wouldn't you want to be involved? What can I do to make you, try this out? So I think that was, a good example of her using being tenacious and going back to the people that said no and saying, okay, you said no, you said the reason was money.
Was price or
I've taken that off the table.
Yep.
So what is it then that is not working for you?
Yeah, which is a really efficient way to do it when you think about it, because, she's got a relationship, she knows the business, she's qualified the client.
Yep.
The barrier in this instance would have been price for the proposition.
She
so
took
she addressed
that away. So then it's very hard for them to say no then. And not that you can always discount, and, that is a reality of media. We can't just go, oh my God, straight to a discount.
No.
But, during that event week, that's what we say. This is what we can do. This 1 week only, we're on sale. It's like our Black Friday sale, so to speak.
Well, look, I think that's been a really robust kind of conversation around packaging your inventory. I've got a bit of a hairy one in the next segment, so let's jump into that now.
I can't ask my sales manager that.
It's an issue when their name is withheld. So this individual is from Perth. They reached out to me on LinkedIn, and I'm going to jump into the question, and then we might just sort of look at problem solving on the fly here.
Okay.
So, name withheld from Perth. I sell broadcast media for one of the major networks. I relocated to Perth from Melbourne with my company 7 months ago to be near my fiance's mum. Our Perth rate card is set by a national pricing team based in Sydney who don't understand that in Perth, these prices are about 20 to 30% higher than what our main competitors can offer or what our clients are willing to pay. I constantly share this feedback, but they say that they can't discount any further because clients in Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane will buy that inventory at the higher rate. My sales manager doesn't seem to be too bothered by this because she is only worried about the company hitting its national revenue target. Coming from Melbourne, where I was hitting consistently each month our budget, I really struggle with missing budget, especially when we are turning away business because we're not willing to price ourselves competitively. What would you suggest I do here? Before we jump into it, I can probably look at this a couple of ways and go, discounting is not an option here. Price probably doesn't feel like it's the issue. It might be around access to inventory is probably issue number one, and being able to balance the fact that the company needs to maximize their yield and you're in a market where you can't get that yield. So just reflecting on that, is that do you see these kind of issues come up in your sort of day-to-day consulting gigs? Yeah,
and look, sometimes you can pitch an idea and it's not going to work out, and management have goals they've got to meet, and at the end of the day we work for those companies, so we've got to make it work. I think it goes back to repackaging what you're selling in a different way, looking at it differently, seeing the value, because obviously there is value. If people are willing to pay for that in other markets, then okay, they're willing to pay for it. Then we have to work out why people in Perth are not willing to pay for that. Or can I package it up with something else that shows some kind of value that I feel comfortable with? I think it is about being creative and changing the message to what you're doing, because discounting is not an option.
Well, yeah,
obviously,
yeah.
By the sound of it, unless you start writing letters to the CEO, but he's probably not going to read them either.
I had a really similar experience living in Adelaide for a few years, and very lucky to have just an absolute premium asset in that market that we were selling, but it was consistently sold out. And it's a
good problem to have.
It's a great problem to have. It is. And I suppose what was helpful in that situation was looking at it going, well, first and foremost, we don't have the ability to command a premium on this inventory that we can get out of other markets, or do we? What's the sales cycle of this inventory? Is it getting snapped up later? Is it getting sold in advance? Do I have the ability to get ahead of the market? If we're transacting in Q3, do I move into Q4 and start to lock some business down?
Yeah. And do I need to look outside the people I'm pitching it to? Because if they're not seeing the value, is there other people that might see the value? Because I don't think anyone is seeing 100% of people in their territory at all. I think there's always room to go and see new people and pitch new. It takes longer, we get it, but start, like you say, going to Q4, going to, next year, what can I do to kind of look at that?
And I think this individual's probably frustrated. And look, we would all be frustrated by this. My manager cares about the national business hitting its number because the manager's probably remunerated based on that.
Yeah.
I have a number I need to hit. And on paper, I should be making my budget every month, but we're turning business away. And so that's a tough one. And I get why this is I can't ask my sales manager that type question. But I guess that has to be a conversation that does have to happen with your manager to go, the drivers in the business are for me to write this revenue. I can't hit this revenue objective at a competitive market yield based on how we're trading now.
Yep.
Here's what I would suggest I do to try and maximize our revenue with all these forces and factors.
Yep.
I'm going to get ahead of the market. I'm going to sell off peak. I'm going to try to look at, potentially some different kind of more integrated solutions here for clients.
Yep.
But then at the same time, it's about having a really frank convo and going, if the business is hitting its revenue objective, then happy days. Can we redefine what success looks like here? Do we have another product that isn't selling that you can put me more exclusively on?
Yeah.
I get the fact that when you've got your competitors who can pull the price lever and can trade business out from under you, it's frustrating. But I would also question whether, do you just want a price-sensitive customer that doesn't have any loyalty to you, or do you want to foster a relationship with somebody that maybe does, see value in what you're doing?
Yeah, and I think see value in your own product, but also too, you can only change things that are in your circle of influence. If something is outside your circle of influence and you've tried to change it, then you need to look within about what are the things I can change, how can I change it, and how can I make a difference, So I think it goes back to that, and unfortunately, sometimes discounting is just not an option.
Yeah.
Which is not so bad.
I hear you. And yeah, what I'd say to this person is there is definitely a solution here. It might seem, I look at it, and I've been in these shoes. It's like I'm getting revenue pressure. I've got a strong competitive set who can undercut me. I don't have access to inventory at a price point the market wants to pay, et cetera, et cetera. It can feel something like an impossible situation, but having been there and having worked through it, it isn't. You've just got to reframe what the actual problem is.
Yeah.
And as far as I'm concerned, the first thing you should look at here is what's currently, what is a pressure point of the trading team? If they're setting the prices, they're going to have a pretty good understanding of what isn't selling, what is selling on what time frame. Lock in a call with them. Have a chat to them and go, look, what are your objectives? What does success look like for you guys? And what are some things that I can help you with there? So the relationship piece with these people is important. And I know sometimes these people can be very black and white and can be very stern, and that's their job. They're the gatekeeper, right?
Yeah.
You'd estimate there'd be a couple of $1 million a year that they would add to the bottom line just from good pricing.
Yeah.
So they have a purpose. The CEO wants them there to control that. But if you can actually build out a little bit of a rapport with them to go, can we create a new trading dynamic in our marketplace that is more tailored to us, that helps us, sell that fringe inventory for you, or helps protect yield where you need it to, or, can help us maximize our fill rates in times of the year when the market isn't actually buying. Getting more sophisticated with your trading and just getting an understanding of their world can really help you then translate that to something you take to market.
And I think it goes back to know your product and know what's available and where you can go with it. And, that's very important, knowing those
idiosyncrasies.
Yeah, so that you can work within them. I think that's important.
Most of the time when these questions come through, they're more political. They're more like, I just don't want to ask my boss that because it's embarrassing. But I think with this one, it's probably good to get your perspective on it too, because you are going to have, customers or clients. Really, at the end of the day, the people engaging you are the people that want that premium pricing. And they're not the sales force.
No. And I think, demand and supply, there is, if everyone wants something, it's going to go up in price. If people don't want it, then it's going to go down in price at some stage because you're not selling it. So, but if the market's there and they're selling out, then it kind of warrants the better rate, I think.
Well, if this name withheld in Perth wants to get in touch with you, or anyone listening wants to get in touch with you, Jo, how do they do that?
By email.
Do you want to shout it out, or do you want me to put you in touch?
Oh, you can put me in touch.
Okay, reach out to me. Before we do draw it to a close, on the topic of packaging your inventory, is there maybe like a parting thought or anything you want to sort of share with the audience just before we wrap this up?
Think about the strategy of it and, ask for the business, because we all get wrapped up in we've got this great idea and this great product and here's all this great inventory that we've got. And then you forget to ask for it, like to say, how can we make this happen? How can we move forward? What can we do today?
And I think that's a really good point to end on. You're absolutely right. Like, the negotiation is fun when you've got more tools at your disposal to build the value proposition and to get it comfortable. So leverage it where you can.
Yeah.
Well, Jo, as a final thought for me, and I do this wrap up every episode, but, media sales, if nothing else, we know this is about mental toughness. It's about persistence.
Yep.
So if you are struggling, keep listening to what we're doing here, because it's all about progress before perfection, right? If you keep doing the brilliant basics well, you will be successful in media sales. And I just hope that people keep driving forward. Have an amazing week. If you want to reach out to Jo with any queries, I'm sure she will absolutely respond in due course once I put her in touch. Yes. Name withheld from Perth. I'm speaking to you in particular. But Jo, we thank you for being here today, and we hope to get you back soon.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You've been listening to Media Sales Mastery, the podcast for media sales professionals. Head to MediaSalesMastery.com to help pick the topic, guide the show, and don't forget to subscribe to receive new episodes each week.